It's the worst feeling ever. You're
Yes.
just a sitting duck. You're like, well, I can't really
Here
ride
we go.
hard.
Here goes the next guy.
That's right. It's like, well, you got me.
Yep.
And let me guess, the way this sport works, there are 9,000 arm pump remedies. Everybody's got one. Spray this on, wrap this,
Yep.
eat this, drink it. There's nothing you can do, man.
For me, it's always as if I'm falling off the back of the motorcycle
Yep.
and my shock isn't up enough coming
Okay.
out of the turns.
Yeah.
Then I'm pulling myself too much. It's like a
Holding on
row motion,
tight.
right? And then it makes me tight. So that's what happens to me.
What? Did you hear that? That's it, right there. Welcome to the Weege Show, yeah! Don't need to record on a Friday afternoon at Glendale, Arizona. I'm bringing the show to you on Thursday because I have already gotten the scoop that you need to hear. The hot topic this week, what the heck happened to Eli Tomac in Detroit? Opinions all over the map. I will uncover it here with an exclusive interview you've probably not seen. Just saw a clip there, though. All brought to you by Honda and the CRF450R and 250R. Makes winning look easy. Jett Lawrence with the win last weekend. Jett and Hunter on the 450s. We will be back to 250 SX West this weekend. In Glendale, Jo Shimoda trying to get his season back on track. And Chance Hymas looked darn fast on the CRF250R last week in Detroit. But he did re-aggravate just slightly his previous knee injury in the sand. And that's why he dropped back late in both the heat and the main. Should be back, though, for his race at Arlington. But what you want to know about is Eli Tomac, who we now know the team has said simply suffered arm pump due to bike setup issues. But again, opinions are all over the map on this one. But so let's get to the exclusive interview. Myself and Ricky Carmichael. One caveat. This interview is actually recorded in 2022 at the Thunder Valley Pro Motocross National, but it is shocking. It is incredible how relevant, how identical it is to the story from Detroit.
I just got really tight.
Yep.
Arms got arm pump. I'll be totally honest. I just got arm pump and went backwards.
Okay.
Basically got kicked out the back. And I'm sure everyone that rides has felt that. We'd think we wouldn't face that at this level, but we still do. If you're off and you're not comfortable and you're not feeling in that good spot, whether it's with the track or with your motorcycle. And I was just off on my setup for race day. Period.
It's the worst feeling ever. You're
Yes.
just a sitting duck. You're like, well, I can't really
Here
ride
we go.
hard.
Here goes the next guy.
That's right. It's like, well, you got me.
Yep.
And let me guess, the way this sport works, there are 9,000 arm pump remedies. Everybody's got one. Spray this on, wrap this,
Yep.
eat this, drink it. There's nothing you can do, man.
For me, it's always as if I'm falling off the back of the motorcycle.
Yep.
And my shock isn't up enough coming
Okay.
out of the turns.
Yeah.
Then I'm pulling myself too much. It's like a
Holding
row
on
motion,
tight.
right? And then it makes me tight. So that's what happens to me.
Can you tell with the bike setup before it even happens, like, oh, the way this bike feels, I might be in for it in a lap or two?
Well, I didn't realize that obviously until the race. I mean,
But I mean
we
early in the moto where you're like, oh, this is not the way I want the bike to feel.
Yeah, I was actually nervous after practice because
Okay.
I'm like, those practice
Yeah.
laps where we're sprinting so hard, I was already blowing up at the end of those laps. So I'm like, uh-oh, this could be a long day.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you couldn't change enough to get it where you wanted.
It's hard to take that big of a gamble because a lot of times you can make things worse. when
I see. Obviously things were way better at Hangtown.
Yep.
Did you know going into Hangtown, I think we got a fix for this, or did you need to race again to know for sure?
I mean, you always think you have the fix and you don't know
Okay.
until you go
Yeah.
put it to the test. So I got the balance better. I was way more comfortable. I was able to do my thing, just go lap after lap, and felt comfortable doing it. So hopefully we're good from here on out.
So there you have it. Arm pump. Seems crazy that something that small could make such a big difference, but it has happened before in Tomac's career. Now, it hasn't actually happened probably as much as we think. It's probably half a dozen races, maybe 10 races, maybe 12. But when you have the high standard, when people expect you to win, when you do win, it's like a tear-off. No one even really thinks about it. When you have a bad race, that's what gets everyone talking. Welcome to that club, Jett Lawrence, by the way, who certainly got more attention with the races he did not win this year than the ones he did. There's not really much that anyone's saying about him right now after winning Detroit. The focus has gone back to Tomac. Same thing. I think there's more talk about Tomac getting 10th in Detroit than riding really well and winning a Triple Crown main at our last race at Anaheim 2. What's that? He won? Oh, yeah, he did. He rode really well at Anaheim. Let's have a look.
Can he hold the whole shot? No, it's going to be Vince Freezy with a Ghostbuster whole shot, and Tomac shoots the lead, Roxon down.
Yeah, Roxon went down in the first corner. I think he slid out, made contact, but man, Eli Tomac coming out of that first corner with some serious speed. He was on the inside on that right-hander.
Oh, he's got a big gap over everyone else in points and lifts into this crowd as Eli Tomac comes by in the lead. A legend of Supercross, back from injury and back out front.
So how about that? Brutal speed, sprint speed on the early laps, pulling away from Chase Sexton, and jumping the triple quad that most riders did not attempt throughout the night show. Doesn't look like a guy who's scared, who's coming back from injury, who's on a farewell tour and doesn't want to take chances, who has 3 kids at home and he just wants to get home in one piece. All these theories that we heard. Doesn't look like that to me. It looks like what we've seen from Eli Tomac, be he 22 years old, 25 years old, or 31 years old. Sometimes he gets arm pump and has weirdo races. Now, by the way, I'm just going with the team's word here. This is literally what I got from Jeremy Coker, who did text me back when I asked if something was up. Thanks for reaching out. Yes, I would like to comment. There was not a shock failure in any way. His current shock setup is good in harder, drier tracks. When we get to the sticky, ruddy dirt like this weekend, it sucked the rear of the bike down and in turn gave him arm pump. Just like what Eli was talking about at the Pala Motocross opener back in 2022. But by then, Jeremy got back to me Wednesday afternoon. Opinions were all over the map. Again, Achilles, kids at home, old, realizes that Jett Lawrence, Chase Sexton, these dudes are too fast. I just don't buy that after watching what he did at Anaheim 2. Now, by the way, as I said, I'm taking this at face value. There are some people who have told me they still think there might have been a bit of a shock malfunction, not a major one. One thing to note is that there's things that control the low speed and high speed of a shock. So you could still do the high speed stuff, the big landings. You could still do Supercross triples and not be bounced into the stands. But that doesn't mean the low speed stuff like bumps coming in and out of turns. That could still be a problem. You could have one issue that doesn't affect the other. That's how suspension works. But honestly, it doesn't matter. Whether it's the shock failure or the shock setup, team says setup, the point is that this wasn't just Eli Tomac. This wasn't Eli Tomac being old or coming back from an Achilles or anything like that. And we do have proof many, many times that when Eli has these weirdo races, he just comes right back the next week and wins. Like the show that I showed you from 2022, we talked about him being spit out the back at the Pro Motocross opener and then winning a moto the next weekend at Hangtown in a gnarly battle with Chase Sexton, who we know was really good that year. So it's just this weird thing that happens, and be it setup or some part failing, whatever story you want to believe, I think that's the story we have to believe. It was the suspension deal and not any of the other stuff. And let me add a little more evidence to this. So here's what we expected, by the way, going into Detroit. I will use last week's preview show on Friday to illustrate this.
Inside the stadium, we're good, which is why this dirt is usually actually some of the most slippery of the year. It's not soft and rutted like you would think. It's definitely not old Pontiac. It's not Indy. Talking to the great Justin Brayton, and he said that this actually is maybe the slickest track of the year is what we normally get. We'll see if it's different.
Yes, now let me give you the review show after the race on Saturday. What is normally a pretty hard pack track was not. And talking to the Star Yamaha mechanics for Webb and Tomac before we went racing, they said, no, it's much softer than usual. And everyone had to adjust to that. Yes, that's true. I hate to admit this, but hanging out with Steve Mathis in the pits before we went racing in Detroit, we were talking to the mechanics from Star Racing, including Tomac's mechanic, and he commented the track was really way softer than they expected it to be based on previous Detroits. Like the previous year, dude, 2022 was like an ice rink and guys were going down all over the place. Not Tomac. They had that thing super dialed for that track, but the 2024 Detroit, super soft compared to the previous couple of years. I know it seems crazy they could be that far off. You might think they could make changes, but I asked Tomac about it in the interview you just saw. You risk it when you change too much. I'm sure they thought they had it dialed. I'm sure they were chasing it all day. I'm sure they made adjustments. Clearly they weren't big enough adjustments. But that's ultimately what made the difference. So that puts us to the test here. We don't have sticky, soft dirt. this weekend in Glendale will be hard and dry. We'll see, though. Actually, last year's race was super hard and dry. I had been commenting that they had really figured out the dirt in Glendale. For the most part, it had been not full-on soft-rutted tacky like Indianapolis, but it wasn't as hard and dry the previous years before 2023 as it had been back in the day when we were at the baseball stadium and the other part of town. So it might not be as hard and dry as you might think. It might not be as hard and dry as last weekend, but it probably won't be as sticky as Detroit turned out to be. And also, we've seen Eli, regardless of terrain, simply bounce back from these weirdo races. So if you're an Eli Tomac fan, and who isn't, that's what we have to root for this weekend. It'd be great to have grand overtures about what this means about this man and his career, and is he done, and is it the kids at home? Might I add, technically, statistically, Tomac has never won a Supercross championship without kids. His first child was born right before he clinched the 2020 title, and then all the Supercross titles since then, including the one he coulda, shoulda, woulda had last year. I really don't buy into this kids slow you down thing anymore. A lot of the riders will tell you being able to focus on something else instead of having your brain wrapped around racing 24/7 just adds time to your career. And to that end, we might want to say this is ridiculous for someone at Tomac's world-class level to go from 3rd to 10th and lapped due to arm pump. But the longevity that Tomac has, and the reason he's setting so many records in this sport and moving up the chain, is not just for his speed, but for his durability and his longevity. He is simply still good at a much later age than almost any other guy of his level, any other legend peer of the sport. And I believe a lot of that is because he hasn't been hurt much. And I believe the reason he hasn't been hurt much is because Tomac, on the nights where he's not feeling it, or is feeling arm pump, doesn't still try to win, which sometimes is heroic, and sometimes leads to broken wrists and torn ACLs and shoulder problems and all these things. There's basically been 2 major injuries in Tomac's career, 2015 and last year. That is a record that anyone in the starting gate would take when you consider how many races he's lined up for and how fast he has been and how many races he has won. Shoot, he might be more durable than even Ryan Dungey, who is considered the gold standard of that. So I don't think those 2 things are unrelated. When he's not feeling it, he just takes what he can get. And it leads me to thinking that just right off last weekend, there is a chance that the Anaheim 2 Eli Tomac will be back this weekend in Glendale. I presented my case. I presented my evidence. But if you do want to come back and he doesn't win Glendale and say that this didn't work out, remember, this is the cool thing about racing. Everything is judged on a sliding scale. The expectation or the question of can Tomac get back to his 2023 pre-injury level? But that's not the only answer we're looking for. Because Eli Tomac in 2024 isn't racing the Eli Tomac of 2023. He's racing Jett Lawrence, Chase Sexton, Cooper Webb, Aaron Plessinger, Jason Anderson, Ken Roxon. The list goes on. And that is a moving target all the time. So Sexton would like to say he's better on a KTM than he was on a Honda last year. Webb would like to say he's better on a Yamaha this year than a KTM last year. And we don't even have Jett to compare to last year. So I don't think this is the end of Eli Tomac being good. Does this mean he's going to go on to win the title or be full beast mode? Well, some of that is out of his hands. A lot of it depends on what level is everyone else riding. And that's the same for everyone, which makes this so fun to watch. Anyway, thanks for watching the Weege Show. I presented my case. Good luck in Glendale, Eli and Eli Tomac fans.